It's time to talk about the bad side of Los Angeles. Normally I talk about the good side of Los Angeles, from its amazing real estate to its gorgeous weather, but today we're going to look at what's not so great. Most major cities in the United States share some common negative characteristics with each other, from homelessness to cost of living, and Los Angeles is no exception. My name's Pearce and I work on a real estate team in Los Angeles, helping people move from all over, and today we're going to look at the top 5 worst things about living in Los Angeles. Let's start by talking about the traffic, because Los Angeles traffic is some of the worst in America. When compared to the rest of the United States, LA ranks 5th in traffic, and that's not in a good way. Although we do beat out Boston, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and New York, which all have higher traffic rates than us. As a person living in Los Angeles, you spend about 120 hours a year in traffic on average, which is basically 5 full days out of your year. Now, personally, I don't actually drive that much in Los Angeles, and I'm not someone who commutes on a day-to-day basis, so I don't actually get affected by these times as much, but I can see that somebody who's a commuter or drives across Los Angeles daily could really be affected by this extra traffic time. Los Angeles has about a 33% congestion rate, which basically means it's going to take you about 33% longer to get to anywhere. So if you're looking at somewhere that's 30 minutes away, the average time it's going to take you to get in LA is going to be about 40 minutes. Personally, I think Los Angeles has pretty bad traffic, but after you live here for a while, you sort of find a way to navigate it. Especially if you're good with using apps like Waze and things like that. There's a lot of back streets and alternate routes to use in LA. The worst times of day to drive in Los Angeles are between 3 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and the time with the absolute worst traffic in Los Angeles every week is about 3 to 4 p.m. on Fridays. And trust me, that's a fact. A couple tips to help you navigate the Los Angeles traffic a little bit better would be: 1, try not to drive during rush hour times, and I know that's a little bit of an obvious tip, and you can't really help that if you commute to like a 9 to 5 job or something, but a lot of people are working more remotely these days, and if you can try to find times to drive or make meetings or things like that that are outside of normal rush hour times, that'll be great for you. And another tip is just to live close by to a lot of the things you need to do, and I know that's kind of common sense, and you can't always do that depending on where your job is or things like that, but Los Angeles has so many areas that are outside the major city centers that have absolutely everything you'll need, so it's not that hard to do in LA. I also wanted to note that the traffic in Los Angeles gets really bad in a few specific areas, so I'm going to show you those right now. One of these is where the 10 freeway meets the 110 and the 5 freeways in downtown Los Angeles. These areas are heavily commuted, and you have a lot of people coming in from Orange County and Santa Ana towards Los Angeles on these freeways. And you also have people that are coming from the Westside down the 10 freeway, and they all kind of meet there in downtown LA, so it's definitely a congested area. However, personally, as someone who's lived in Los Angeles my whole life, I hardly have ever passed by this area. I don't need to use it a lot. It's more of a commuter route than anything, so it's something that you probably won't even have to deal with that often. And another heavy area of traffic is near downtown, where the 101 South actually comes towards downtown. In the last 10 to 15 minutes of the 101 coming into downtown, it's pretty much backed up 24/7. I know there's obviously times where it's pretty free if it's the middle of the night or something, but pretty much every day of the week from when people are awake, you're going to have about a 10 to 15 minute wait in traffic just to get from the 101 into downtown. And the last section I wanted to mention is the 101 freeway in the San Fernando Valley running along Ventura. This section of the 101 that's sandwiched between Sherman Oaks and Glendale area, because it connects with the 134 and the 5 freeways, is typically very congested. So yeah, traffic is definitely one of the worst things in Los Angeles, but it's also something that you would expect from one of the largest cities in America. Not to mention, Los Angeles has so many things to do in so many different parts of it, and it's around such a large land area that you really don't need to commute across the city that much unless it's for a very specific reason, so usually people stay kind of closer to where they live. Now, for the next worst thing about living in Los Angeles, we have taxes. I'm personally not a big fan of taxes whatsoever, but let's leave that rant for another time. Looking at state income tax, California's is actually the highest out of all 50 states. If you're looking at this tiered income tax chart, you'll see that most people who live in Los Angeles will fall around this 60 to 300K kind of income range here. And that means you're going to be paying 9.3% in income tax. And this 9.3% goes all the way up to 12.3% if you make over $625,000, and it caps off at a ridiculous 13.3% because they have this extra 1% mental health services tax added if you make over $1 million a year. My advice is simply just get a great CPA or tax guy, because California income taxes are not fun. When you combine these with federal taxes and realize how much of your income goes to the government, you wonder why nothing ever gets fixed. So I definitely think income tax is something to consider when moving to California, because there are 8 states with no income tax at all, and comparable states like New York actually have lower income tax rates for sure. For example, people in New York making between $80,000 to $1 million are paying less than 7% a year in income tax. To put this in simple terms, if you make $500,000 a year, you're paying about $34,000 in state income tax in New York, and in California, if you make about $500,000 a year, you're paying about $51,000 in income tax, so that's about an extra $17,000 in state income tax. Now, with that being said, that was a large income example. If you're making, $100,000 or $150,000 or something like that, chances are it's only going to be a couple $1,000s a year difference between California and similar states. And on the bright side, California actually has lower property taxes than most states. The average property tax in the United States is 1.07%, and the property tax in California is 0.73%. Yes, that means property taxes in Los Angeles are about 30% less expensive than property taxes throughout the rest of the nation. I think when making the decision to move somewhere, income taxes are an important thing to note, but they shouldn't always be the deciding factor, because there are a lot of variables that can go into how much income you can earn. One of these variables is economic opportunity, which you can find a lot of in Los Angeles. Another variable is, for example, even though states like New York have a lower income tax rate, they actually have a higher overall cost of living. With that, let's move on to our next worst part about living in Los Angeles: homelessness. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against homeless people, and I think it's a big problem that should be addressed in this country. Most of the homeless people I see around Los Angeles seem to be struggling with mental health issues and just trying to survive. With that being said, homelessness is a big problem in Los Angeles. Before the pandemic, there were about 40,000 homeless people in LA, and since then, these numbers have increased by over 50% to about 66,000 homeless people. Once again, homelessness is one of these things that's gotten worse since the start of the pandemic. You can see similar homeless problems in areas like Portland and Seattle and places like that. As far as Los Angeles goes, it's pretty obvious that Skid Row in downtown LA is a place that you'll find a large collection of homeless people, but it doesn't just end there. You're going to see homeless people in places now like Venice Beach and near the 101 freeway on the overpasses, and kind of just scattered all around. They're not so much in the very wealthy or affluent areas in the suburban areas, but definitely most city centers are going to have homelessness, at least in some places. Luckily, this issue is being addressed. The Los Angeles Alliance for Human Rights recently settled a lawsuit with the city of Los Angeles. In this settlement, the city agreed to create shelter or housing over the next 5 years for about 60% of the total homeless population in Los Angeles. Now, I know it's hard for the government to do anything right, but I think this settlement will definitely help address the homeless problem way more in the next few years than it's been addressed in the past. On that note, let's move on to the next worst thing about Los Angeles and look at crime. Los Angeles is such a large city, and there are so many family-friendly areas to live that have very low crime rates. But in the heart of the city, the crime rates are some of the worst in the country. LA ranks as the 9th highest murder rate in the United States. Some cities with comparable murder rates include Portland, San Diego, and Las Vegas. In addition, the property crimes in Los Angeles last year were about twice as high as the national average. A lot of the property crimes here come from vehicle theft, with a car being stolen in Los Angeles about every 23 seconds. Property crime rates in Los Angeles are comparable to cities like Atlanta, Phoenix, Dallas, and San Francisco. If we take a look at this map, we can see that nearly half of all homicides in Los Angeles occur all within the South LA and the downtown LA region, so it's really just a small section of Los Angeles that receives most of the crime. These major metropolitan areas, especially those affected by homelessness and high rates of poverty, often experience much higher crime rates, and Los Angeles is no exception. If you'd like to see crime rates for specific areas in Los Angeles, you can check out my website in the description, where I have a Los Angeles neighborhood section that breaks down crime rates in each and every neighborhood that I have listed. Now on to our last worst thing about living in Los Angeles, which is the cost of real estate. Even though we are talking about the bad things in Los Angeles, it does have so many great aspects to it, and the location is so good that it does have some of the most expensive real estate in the nation. Now, that's not to say there aren't a few cities with higher median home prices, because places like San Francisco and San Jose have more expensive home prices than LA. However, the median home price in Los Angeles comes in at just under $1 million, with the average price of homes listed and sold last month at $975,000. And although the price of real estate has increased everywhere since the beginning of the pandemic, we're actually starting to see a bit of a slowdown in the market. At this time last year, there have been about 28% more homes sold in Los Angeles than now. This means that homes have been staying on the market a little bit longer, and the demand has been dropping a little bit recently. And although if you want to live in some of the best areas in Los Angeles, it's hard to find an apartment for less than $2,000, the median rental price for apartments in Los Angeles is only about $1,500. When you compare that to rents across the nation, Los Angeles is actually very reasonable. While there are many disadvantages that plague major metropolitan areas throughout the United States, these really shouldn't scare you away from moving to Los Angeles. In fact, after living here my whole life, but visiting over 30 states and spending a lot of time in other cities, I still have to say Los Angeles is my favorite city in America. So once again, my name's Pearce and I work on a real estate team in Los Angeles helping people move from all over. If you found any information in this video valuable, make sure to subscribe because I will be releasing weekly videos on what it's like to live in Los Angeles and its different neighborhoods.